All right. So let's get started. You guys have had a really nice run this far, producing a UI prototype using your Bootstrap, and you've made up some pretty impressive looking sites that, frankly, are for many of you, they're ready to deploy. Um, the two big skill sets, or really the three big skill sets that you've crossed over in order to get there, has to do with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And those are the best skills to learn right now as you get ready to learn what's called React JS. And the best way to demonstrate React is to say, really, you guys have um, the sites that you have right now, and what they're very good at is they're very good at being websites. And so, what I want to use, I want to talk about Pinterest and Instagram because they're both websites for sure, but they're really web experiences where here you're moving over something. But what I like about this image is not only is this an image but the moment that I move over it, it has several elements. One is I can expand it and I can go into a page unto its own. Then it has these rich UI components. But it's almost like there's a separate web page for this image when I go there, where I've got this search component, and then I can save to these, tag them, and I can describe where I want to put them. And here I have, and there's all these additional fun GUI elements, but that in itself is an impressive GUI. And I can go to social, or I can really trigger these other menus. And what I like so much about this is, well, isn't that true? This is a grid of posts that are trending relative to stuff that I look at. Why they figured out I want to watch Nintendo, I don't know. Maybe one of my kids is buying Nintendo. Oh boy. There's all sorts of, analytics tracking that's recommending these things for me. But what I like so much about it is when I roll over these images, it creates these other UI components where this is a component that's available on the other page. And then I can send this to somebody, or I have these other menu items. So it's almost like a web page within a web page. And they're all kind of responsively resizing. Maybe some of these are larger images to begin with. And then when I click onto it, it goes to its own detail page. And there are these rich UI items that are associated with it. And so that's a component that I'm building up, and that's a component that I'm building up. And this menu drop down is a component in itself. And that same drop down menu right here is accessible when I go to the detail page for it. So that same component is available here as it is on the tile view or the card view. So I want to talk about, well, where to next? You guys have the ability to make JavaScript, and you have the ability to make these image grids, using your grid CSS. But, with these very advanced sites such as Pinterest, and I think Instagram has a very good website. Not now. These also are like little web pages within a web page. So these are rich UIs that are, and I go into that post, what's available on that post. This guy, whoever that is, I can go to their account, and it's these very, very rich web experiences that kind of characterize where the web certainly is traveling, where it's going. And these are kind of like UIs. They're kind of like web pages within web pages. And there's all these data-rich components that I can follow. And this is, look at he's followed by this person, and this is and then there are these little gadgets up there, and the search. And I think we've become accustomed to, web experiences that are very engaging, that have huge content elements, and that have a lot of data that's coming in. And frankly, that may be a different series. The suggestions make from a different recommendation engine. than even the stories links. So that's coming from a data source related to the accounts that I follow. And that may be a different data feed than this data feed, or this may be a microservice that's different from this microservice, or this collection of data right here, the suggestions is flowing in from a recommendation engine. And so here's my account. And, as I roll over these images, I have the ability to like them or lay down a comment, and this kind of scroller, gives you a commenting and posting. And this is kind of what we've grown accustomed to within the Facebook economy, where we have a strong UI basis, and we're kind of building up web experiences. And frankly, people want to stage much of their personal life through these rich web experiences. So we're really at a point where we're saying, well, these web experiences or web pages are doing more than software ever did. And what we're doing is we're building in little web pages into the web pages. So if you think about a website, it's really a combination of different little websites, where this post in itself would be, I would be happy if you were to provide just a UI just like this. Many of you would be pretty happy just to have a UI that would be just as capable of this component. But what the Facebook people are saying is that in order to engage people online, what really world-class web pages are doing is they are building up all these little delectable components that are ending up as experiences where people feel like they get to spend lots of time on the site. And of course, the images are important, but it's all this kind of meta activities that go on associated with the image, these activities that are kind of pointing back to the image and drawing value back to the image. Right. So there's all these linkages where you're like, oh, who liked it? Oh, these 5 others. Oh, wow, who are all these people? Do I follow them? And so it's kind of like, oh, Residuous Official. Oh, okay, I'm going to go over there. Okay, what's all this about? Wow, it's a whole other world that this is leading to. Oh, the bags. Okay, what's this about? And this is kind of what people are asking for from the web, certainly from Instagram, which is kind of the ultimate brand communication, platform where, who is this person? What are they up to? So I think where we're going to go, and there's a lot of borrowings. These 2 sites are some of, the best in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of borrowings between the employees as they move between them and they look at each other. And I love the analytics for Pinterest because here are all these pieces of content that seemingly have some relationship to these up here. So this is the outcome. This is a cooking class, and this is, we wouldn't be a good cooking show if we weren't going to showcase, the dish before we make it. This is a website. Let me see if we get a good refresh going on that loads up different appointments. This is an appointment book, and I'm going to be able to add content to it, and I should be able to sort everything, and I should be able to adjust these items and even delete them as I see fit. And I can add appointments through it, and I'll demonstrate this as we go, but I'll be able to add a new appointment, and it'll appear. Here's an appointment that I added just a moment ago. Dino is down there, and it's going to get sorted. And what if we change it from Dino to Zeno? And each of these fields are going to be deletable. So what we're really going to teach you how to do is to create different components that operate as independent web experience, that really build up to build a web experience. So all these individual components are going to build up to a very full-featured software, software in the browser experience. I built this here in Cloud9, and you're going to see the different phases as we build it up. And then also I have a workbook that's about 70 pages long that I'm going to make sure you get access to so that you can see the steps that I take as I build it each time with the source code, so you can type it in, and especially with what changes, so that you can feel like you're building it along with me. There's probably about 21 separate lessons. It's all going to happen here on Cloud9, and we'll be touching briefly upon EC2 and what we can do here. Some of you are going to see the processes as it pertains to EC2 and deployment. Some of you are going to be more developer focused, so you're going to see it through Cloud9. And so, I think the key here is to live inside the culture. Nothing is ever going to get said just once. Stuff is going to be said a multitude of times. Hopefully we can get code up onto GitHub, or if we can't get it up into GitHub, I'm going to give you a handout booklet so that you'll have a foreground so you can read the lesson before it gets made here in video, and that you'll have a record of what was taught after it got taught, so you can feel like you've got a 360-degree support after you see the movies and after you do the virtual office hours if you want to. By the end of the month, by May, by the end of the class, May, or if you're seeing this in September, in December, you should be getting this finished, this little node site done by the end of the month for the monthly project. And then you should be presenting a more polished version for the final exam, where we'll meet in person and you can walk me through your work. So let's get started. Let's create a new environment here. And let's call this React lesson. And let's go ahead and add this up. I think we're going to create a new instance for the environment via EC2, and that's because it'd be better to do it this way for now. But if you wanted to actually administer the server yourself, you should do it this way. We're not going to do that because we're going to operate here with an EC2. But what's interesting is that, and this one, create React, that one is running here. And these are my various instances that some of these get tripped on the hour, some of these are dormant, some of these are running around the clock. I like the small and the micro because they begin very small. You can make multiple copies of it. They're memory efficient. I like to run a lot of servers, each with their own purpose, and they each have what's called a microservice, where some of them have specific purposes. Some of them, their only job is to just provide a website. While you're in development, you want to go with the smallest and cheapest instance possible. And when you make a new instance here, you're going to launch an instance, but ultimately you want to connect to it. And you're going to connect to it with a key pair. And it's important that you create a key pair when you first create the instance if you want to connect to it via SSH. Now, what you're going to find is that when you create the new environment here, you're actually going to be able to administer the environment via command line inside of your React environment. So let's give a quick example of that. Here I have a command line, and I can go right here and I can say, open the terminal here, and you're actually going to have, your equivalent, Linux command line here, and that means that you've got a very secure an EC2 instance. So you're not root, but you're an administrator of that site, and you can do, installations of stuff as you see fit. And that's all I'm not going to run this command here, but you're going to have a command line access to the server via Cloud9. Now, that means that if you're a systems administrator, you're going to need to log in via Cloud9. That may not be what you want. The sysadmin wants to log in via either a secure shell or a session manager. And I don't have that activated for this particular instance because I'm using Cloud9 exclusively. And some of you have the background where you're like, well, wait a second, I want a secure shell into that instance. But I don't believe I get to do that here. I think I can do maybe EC2 user. Can I go through here? Normally that doesn't, normally it hangs right here. Let's see if it gets in. Normally, once you create an instance using Cloud9, you really need to use Cloud9 in order to interact with it. So the advantage here is that, as a developer, I do all of my own sysadmin. It's just not that difficult, a discipline to learn. I came up through a lot of systems administration. I think as a developer, you can learn a certain amount of, systems maintenance. But frankly, I wouldn't be surprised that it's very valuable for the developer to actually get access to a server, but for the sysadmin to be able to come in independently and audit, the current, how updated the service is, if there isn't any vulnerable software that's running, on a server. So I want to leave that discussion to be quite distinct because it is challenging to interlace, to select, the instance that you're using. Let me just see here. Can I create a new instance in a remote server? What I like right here is, let's say you wanted to create an instance within EC2, which is a Linux or a Windows instance. Me, it's 100% Linux. It's always been. I've never run a Windows instance on AWS. I'm not against it. I just haven't done it before. Let's say you wanted to have a sysadmin launch a new Linux server here in EC2, and then you could capture the login credentials and you could supply that here. So you could supply the login name and the host, which is going to be this, the public DNS, that's going to be that, and you would just log in the port, and then you could paste in. I've done this where I can plug in my key that's been, I'm going to grab that so I can keep that on my, my terminal. Here's my Mac terminal. And, there may be some other environmental configs that you're going to do right there. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create a new instance for the environment, and I'm going to do that through here. So I'm going to end up managing this particular host via Cloud9. But I respect those of you with a sysadmin career path coming up where you're going to say, well, that's great, but I want to be able to do a security audit, or I want to validate it for HIPAA, or I want to involve that Linux instance within a larger security regime. So you're awesome. I like you. For now, I'm just going to do it here because I just want to limit what you need, and you're going to have enough on your plate. So I'm going to make it right here. I'm going to make it, Amazon Linux is perfectly good. I love to contrast Amazon Linux and Ubuntu server. There's plenty for you to research right here. You may already have a relationship with Ubuntu. But it allows you to specify how big you want this to be. Now, you guys are on the free tier most likely. If you're not, you need to be cognizant of what the billing of that server is going to be, what things are going to cost ahead of time. For those of you who are on the free tier, and that's 99.9% of you, and some of you may not be using AWS for the first time. You may have learned AWS in another class. You may still be within the time boundary of the free tier. I think so you'll be using this for free if you use a Nano. Now, if you're going to create a very, a macro instance, a real big one, with 384 gigs of RAM, they're going to charge you for it. And, they have your credit card on file. They're going to charge you for stuff. So you need to follow my guidance and do what I do what I tell you to do because, this is what I do. Like, I know what the ramifications, the decisions here. A T3 Nano is half a gig of RAM, and on, two CPUs, that's tiny. That's just big enough for what we're doing here. What's the size of this thing? That's going to be a T3 small. That's just a winky little tiny size. What else can I tell you about this instance? Number of CPUs, 2 CPUs within a T3, small. So I can guarantee, with the success of this running, a T3 should be just fine, a Nano. And then if you want to do this on a bigger instance later, go ahead, let's do this, get 30 gigs of RAM running there. That may be more appropriate. So again, one of the great things about AWS. So cost savings, after 30 minutes of non-use, you should shut it down. I like to just collapse these windows after I've made things, just so I don't incur, I spend my fair share on Amazon, per month. But so let's go next step. Okay, let's give you a review. Now, you probably noticed a message which was, okay, get a backup. There is no active backup of your environment, and that's true. It's just going to sit, your code is just going to sit on the instance. So perhaps cloning a GitHub repository, that's a good idea. Maybe making your own GitHub repository, that's another one. I interact with GitHub throughout the day. If you go to your, after you've logged in and you want to make a new repository, you can actually, create that here, and you can clone the repository and you could make updates to it. That would be a very, very legitimate way for backing up your Cloud9 repo. We may or may not do a lot with that. I think, do I have this one already running? Do I already have a repo for this? Here, let's take a look. I think I do. And you can kind of tell because when you're looking into a file system, you have a Git folder that has the various, Git, the Git metadata there. So I believe I've got this, I have it on React CPP. Maybe I don't. So maybe I need to find a way to get some of this in front of you. Right now, I'm not so interested in that. I'm going to supply a printout of all this code for you. Now, it's probably been a few weeks or months since you've made a new environment, and what you might enjoy is to configure, some of the themes here, and the editor may be something that you're interested in, so that it emulates VIM or Emacs. I'm a Vim person, so there's all sorts of other settings that can be done here. That can be triggered also via project settings. So you should feel free to cancel out of these. So you've done a real good job here. What I find difficult is I can't make the command line bigger. I can make a file. Let's say I open a file. I can increase the visibility of these kind of files, but it's hard to increase the visibility of these command lines. So, what I've done is whenever I make a command line here, I usually reference this command line in the documentation that I'm going to give to you. So I'm going to make sure that you have it. The first thing I want to do is I want to create a npm init, and that will create an environment wherein I can update, I can add new packages via what's called Node Package Manager. Node is JavaScript that is a full stack development environment. And Node, I mean, I love you Python guys. I write my share of Python. Python's great. I have a bigger enthusiasm for Node.js than I do Python. And the reason why is I can do a lot of very good data science via Node. The difference here is that you can't make very good applications via Python. There just isn't enough. It doesn't. None of the Python web dev platforms compare to those you can make via Node. Also, I find that a lot of big financial exchanges write very effectively on Node. For example, Coinbase, where I do my daily work, they don't have an official Python interface. They have kind of some unofficial Python interfaces versus their Node.js where they have an official interface. So when you code Node, it's very easy to begin to touch the Coinbase crypto exchange where I do high frequency trade design. And so I sense that that influences my choice of Node, where I kind of am advised to do the bulk of my work. Node is just the same JavaScript that you've been doing before. You're going to do more of it here. The last month you've been doing a lot of JavaScript. So let's get started. So npm init means that it initializes this repository so that there will be a series of, it'll be a folder for the Node installs. And I can just kind of give my default through here. And so that adds package.json, which gives the background on any packages that I install here. I'm going to end up installing a lot here. So I'm going to use npx, and I want to run create React app, which will create kind of the world's most common way of creating React.js applications. And it creates a very reliable environment. And let's see. Oh, my bad. I need to add in, I'm sorry, I was paying attention. So it ran create React app. Then I want to sometimes I make mistakes for the internet to make fun of. That's fine. You can see that it's building up a basis of files here that will serve as the application root for a new web application. So it makes a web application right in front of you, and it installs a large set of dependencies or files that are necessary in order to make that application for you. So it's very similar to what you've been making on your own with HTML and JavaScript, but it has a series of HTTP services that allow you to talk back and forth, such as we're doing right here, where we're actually working with live data on the site. Instead of being a Z name, so let's sort that by the pet name in descending order, so that you're working with raw data with not on the local, but on the web service, the website itself. So that's building up, and there's going to be a Git repository inside of there so that it'll talk back and forth to GitHub. That's very good. And then let's go npm start. That's going to be the basis, so we can kind of sample it. And the reason why that fails is I actually need to negotiate. I need to go CPP into that CPP folder. Notice I put the wildcard there in order to get there more efficiently instead of typing it all in. And then I'm going to go npm start from there, and it will queue up the server. then I'll show you how to access that server, because so you kind of now that won't open in preview. That may or may not, that'll confuse it. And then if you go in here, that won't work either. So just make sure that you ignore this. 172, that runs within the Amazon cloud. That's not a public IP. So what you do is you're going to go back to EC2, and let's show you how to do that. So here's your project. Here's the stuff you've been doing this far, your React lessons folder, and you can actually kind of go to your dashboard over here. What that does is you were just here a minute ago, but I like this drop down up here, and you're going to go into EC2. And from here, there's a lot going on here. Like, for example, the keys are very important. Your key pairs, that's very important, so that you can establish a key pair. If you've created a series, if you've created a Linux instance, you can create a key pair for something and then apply it there. I'm not going to do that here, but instances is the next important part. And usually for the instances that are running, these are the two right here. You can kind of identify React lessons. And the reason why I want to negotiate there is that GoodBuddies is the public IP for that. So that means I can paste that in there. And then what I want to do with the URL is I want to go 8080. Let's see if that is loading. And if it gets rejected, then I'm going to need to work with what are called the security groups, and where we have inbound and outbound rules. And let's make sure that it's going to give it to us on HTTPS. And if it's confused, then I want to say for outbound, that's probably fine. It lets everything out. And then if it looks at inbound rules, well, it only allows Secure Shell to go inbound. So we need to actually go into the security groups, and we need to loosen it up a little bit so that the traffic it allows in is going to be, it allows less secure traffic in. So I want to add an HTTP. Now, if you allow all traffic, that definitely opens it up quite a bit. But why don't you allow HTTP from anywhere? And now that that's in there, let's save it. And then let's see if that, I think I specified HTTPS right here. If I go HTTP, and I wouldn't mind adding, because we're adding that protocol 8080, we should edit the inbound rules. And we should say 8080. And we'll see. Oop, I think we need to go anywhere 8080. Let's see if it goes for it. And then we'll see if that works. And that looks pretty good. So just to review what I did, I actually supplied HTTP 8080. You see that back? That's what the default protocol running a test React.js server is. And I grabbed its public IP. Instances. And then you're going to go to your server. and that public DNS is what you want, and you're going to paste that. Let's redo it one more time. Let's go HTTP and put that in there, and then you want to supply 8080, and that's the core page that you established today. So let's wander around a little bit. That's going to be a good lesson for today, and we'll probably post a little bit more. Let's kind of look at the layout. Here you have the source, you have index.js. We have the global includes. So React is getting included right now. We're gonna do quite a bit more with it. Oh, that's interesting how that's blocked right there. I wonder how that happened. Index HTML. You notice that's in the public side. I think we can probably collapse that. This is edit source app.js, right? So we also have the source app.js, where this is what just got loaded. Index.html loaded this page, and then inside of index.html, it reached for this content, and this is what's called a component. And it's kind of at the root of the application. And you can see that this is just some basic HTML, and we've built up a basic class called app here. And we'll go through what all this means and make it so that you're very conversant with it. But you can see inside of this link that that's going to link to edit app.js and save and reload. And I guess what this is demonstrating is that these different that React is built of different components: edit source app.js and save and reload, edit app.js and save and reload, and that's going to link to this. That you're looking at a web page, but it's built with several other components. And what's also interesting is that you have a JavaScript page, which is it's saying, hey, I have this function, and I'm going to return this content. And so it's JavaScript that is kind of emitting HTML. And that's very interesting because usually, the way you've done it the last month is you have HTML, and inside of the HTML you have JavaScript. Here you have a bunch of JavaScript, which is what Node is, that's sitting back on the Linux server that is actually serving up the HTML. And so you're actually allowing for JavaScript to broker out the content as it sees fit. Now, what I want to do is I want to make it so that we can and I want to break that down a little bit. So you can see that I've kind of halted it. And let's refresh this page. And so that's off now. I just pressed Control-C in order to break it down because I actually want to do a little bit of software maintenance. I want to install a few things. So I go to Node Packet Manager. And I want to do that right inside of my CPP lessons because it's going to get installed right inside CPP lessons, and then inside is what's called the Node modules. So Node modules, this is extra software that's been installed here that enables the page, the server to do what I need it to do. So I go to Node Packet Manager inside of CPP Lessons React, install with the save Bootstrap, which is what you think it is, React icons, Lodash, jQuery, Hopper, moment.js, moment, which helps you to format time, and React moment, which are kind of, and we're going to kind of ask for these different components to be installed, and they're going to make their presence node within node modules. They're going to make appearances here as that update process gets made. And so that worked out pretty well. And so I'm going to leave this right here for now. And I'm going to let you play with this. And then this will compose kind of this week. And we'll add a few more videos for this week. Good job.